Hello and welcome to Underground Network Broadcasting Live. It's Wednesday, March the 11th, 2015, and things are going bad. Things are not going any better, but today I will be talking about a documentary film. I spoke about it 2 days ago. It was broadcast. It was broadcasted on Arte, the French and German channel. So you can watch it online. It's up there. It's on arte.tv, if I'm not mistaken, or .com. Or you can watch it on YouTube. It has a French or a German title. The English translation is called Troika, it's called precisely Powerful and Uncontrollable, the Troika. And it was first shown on February the 24th, 2015 on that channel, so in French and German. I watched the film and the documentary film, and it is absolutely incredible to see the level of corruption, the level and the lack of transparency, of this unelected institution that which looks like has absolute asylum. It is untouchable. It cannot be touched by anyone. It apparently, according to some of the officials even in the European Union, it sort of falls in some weird void in the structure of the European Union or the Eurozone, and nobody knows how it can be accountable. Nobody can control it. Nobody can stop it. It's an absolute. It's an incredible fact, and what's worse is that nothing has been done so far, and nothing can be done, and that's the sad part. So the documentary starts very early on by describing how this troika was formed back in 2010 by mainly the European institutions, and one of the persons very vocal on this documentary is Mr. Battista, executive director of the International Monetary Fund. He actually is the only one among the people belonging to the institutions, the three institutions, who seems to speak his mind and who seems to speak the truth. Among other things, I've taken some notes. He says that one of the first things that emerged was that the Greek debt should have been restructured from the beginning. So Greece should have had some debt relief from the beginning, and he was one of the first ones to be vocal about it, because usually the IMF up until 2010 did not accept to loan money or a huge amount of money if there was not some sort of structure, and if there were doubts about the sustainability, the viability of a debt. It wouldn't go into that process. It was against the practices and against its actual rules. So what they did was they changed the rules, and they changed one of the clauses, the very IMF, International Monetary Fund clauses, and what they did is they added a clause where they could allow an immense loan given to a country, even if the debt was said to be non-viable. So from the beginning, and Mr. Batista says that this basically tarnishes the reputation of an institution such as the IMF, and they changed the rule just for Greece back in 2010. He also says that the misery that was going to be brought to Greece and to the people was known. And so despite all this, they changed the clause, they changed the rules, they gave the loan to Greece without any sort of debt relief or restructuring prior to a program. Why did this happen? For two reasons. So apparently there were some people who played a role in that. One of them was Dominique Strauss-Kahn, which at the time was running for president in France. And what he did was he basically told all the IMF people, being very vocal and being very much against this huge loan being given to Greece without a restructuring. He sort of silenced those decision makers, or he made them look like a minority, and because he was running for president, so all he wanted, the least that he wanted at the time was to have the French banks against him, and the French banks were extremely exposed to Greek debt. So basically, he couldn't be running for president and have the French banks have all these losses. So one of the key persons for the change of this clause was Dominique Strauss-Kahn. The other thing that happened at the same time was the German banks, which it looks like they lobbied a lot, and they convinced Mrs. Merkel that German banks were very exposed and they would go through huge losses. So they just presented this whole thing like Greece is an isolated case. There is a economic crisis. Greece has this huge debt. Let's present it that way. So on the one hand, they had two things to deal with. They had they had to deal with it internally in Germany, but also externally. So this is how they did it. They told the Germans, these Greek people, they're very lazy and they've been living beyond their means all these years, and we will punish them. And poor you German citizen, you will have to pay for that in the name of solidarity. And then they told the Greek people that, oh my God, you're about to be bankrupt, but we will save you. But you have to get back to your senses and work hard and accept all these incredible measures, and we will help you. So this is the way it was sold to the German people and the Greek people. As we all know, turning one against the other up until today. Meanwhile, it's clear from what Mr. Batista says, again, the chief executive director of the IMF, it is clear that it was all done to save French and German banks. French banks were exposed with 20 billion, I think, euros, and German banks with 17 billion euros. Except for Mr. Batista, there is another person in this documentary who saw this whole thing just happen before his eyes, and that's one of the counselors of the European Commission president at the time, Mr. Barroso. His name is Philippe Legrand. So Philippe Legrand is also confirming that this whole thing happened to basically the Troika was formed to sort of save those banks, and it happened without any sort of transparency, and it even violated one of the Maastricht clauses and it all happened just, despite without the people knowing what was really going on. So this is hard. It's hard to watch this today and not sort of feel this anger, because, as we know, things are still going on, and the Troika is there, even though Mr. Varoufakis pretends it's not, even though he changed its name, but we all know that it is still there. The whole thing is just going on, and it will go on. So one of the other persons being interviewed in that documentary is actually Mr. Varoufakis himself, and that's back in summer 2014. The journalist is interviewing Varoufakis, and by the time, I guess, the documentary was finished, Mr. Varoufakis was already a finance minister. But it's really interesting to see Mr. Varoufakis' interview just back 6 months ago, where when and where he speaks the truth. One of the main things that he says is that basically what's been committed is a crime against humanity. He uses those words. Mr. Varoufakis, less than 6 months ago, was speaking of crimes against humanity in regards to how the whole thing in Greece was handled. Also, and that was very much spread yesterday on Twitter and in every single blog, that online blog and newspapers, you probably came across this, that, the Germans are very angry because Varoufakis in a documentary calls the Greek debt unsustainable. And so after watching the documentary, you will realize that they're probably talking about this specific documentary, when back in the day Mr. Varoufakis indeed was speaking of an unsustainable debt, and was speaking of the fact that all these institutions knew that they were giving money to a country which would never be repaid, and they knew that. So he does indeed talk about that, as well as the crimes against humanity. And also, he talks about the fact that a nation was turned against another. So the interesting and sad part is that now that he is a finance minister of Greece, he also says the very well-known fact that the problem of insolvency was treated as a problem of illiquidity, which is one of the first things he said once he was elected and once he was appointed finance minister, but which Mr. Draghi made sure told him never to bring up again, never to mention it again, and Mr. Varoufakis never mentioned it again. So the question is, why this change? Why did this happen? Why Mr. Varoufakis is no longer making any sense? Why isn't he speaking the truth any longer? What is going on? I could go on about the documentary. There are a lot of things that are being said. Basically, the whole point is the Troika, whether you want to call it institutions, whether you want to call it, civils, technical teams, whatever you want to call it, on the ground or in Brussels, or the Troika it looks like it's an illegitimate institution, and it's still operating not only in Greece but in many European countries, and how and who and when will someone or a government or a group of people will be able to stop this institution, this illegitimate, illegal institution from operating in all those countries, is a big question mark. Who will it account to? And that's another question. Will it ever be accountable for those those crimes against humanity? There are other elements in this documentary pointing at the fact that, for example, in Greece, hundreds of people are dying every month. Not every year, every month. So that amounts to a lot of people every year. Hundreds of people, so thousands of people every year that are never registered as what they really are. These people are dying because 3 million Greeks have no longer access to health care. They have reduced the budget of the health budget to 6% of the GDP, when the European Union's average is something like 8%, and Germany's budget for health is 10%. Yet they have reduced Greece's health budget to 6%. They have laid off all these doctors, thousands of doctors, something I think up to 5,000 doctors or 3,000. I don't remember the exact numbers. They basically destroyed a sector that, of course, had problems, but needed some corrective actions to become, needed improvement and could get improvement, but they destroyed it. And as a result, hundreds of people are dying, and those deaths are not registered as deaths coming from those cuts, coming from the fact that the health budget has been reduced, coming from the fact that it's those policies that are creating those deaths. These deaths are registered as deaths. So who is going to point out those crimes? I mean, it's definitely it's definitely precious to see it in a documentary. It's definitely informative and enlightening. The thing is, what and who, what is going to happen, who's going to do something about it? That is the question that remains. I could be talking forever about this documentary. Just as I always do, I will post the link of it in the description box, and you can check it out for yourself. It's about 90 minutes. It tells it all. A friend of mine told me, she lives in France, that this was shown on French TV at 1 a.m. It's incredible how they don't want people to basically watch it, because the programming is made in such a way that they just screened it at 1 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. where most people are basically not watching TV because they're sleeping. Anyway, the good news is that we still have online access to it, and I encourage everyone who understands French or German. Unfortunately, from what I saw, there are no English subtitles unless you're able to find a site where they have it with English subtitles. But in any case, just watch it. It's unbelievable. One other element is that one sees that the Troika in most countries has acted as a protection for oligarchs. So wherever there were attempts, or there were ways to get to oligarchs, to get to people tax evading, to really wealthy people tax evading with proof, the Troika was stepping in and was discouraging such moves. So the fact that middle class is being sought after and persecuted for basically moderate tax evasion, because most probably middle class can't pay. This is what they're after, but they are protective of very wealthy people. They're protective of bankers. There's the case of Cyprus is very well described in this documentary, and how the Bank of Cyprus was one of the banks was basically the selling of it was imposed by the Troika, and it was given to a Greek bank, and everybody knows how they basically took all the deposits of the Cypriot people. So this whole thing is very, very well explained in there, and you have people talking about it. Another sad thing is the amount of blackmail, and this is seen at Cypriot level, Greek level. Portugal has a lot of cases where people, actually ex-politicians, ex-ministers, are showing emails or showing letters from the Troika with basically blackmailing. If you don't do this, we will not deliver the next tranche. Are there other cases where the Troika officials, they call them in the documentary low-rank civil servants, because I guess that's what they are. Low-rank civil servants are changing entire documents of ministers. They have basically scrapped all the words, and they are rewriting a law or a decree to the last word. So all this is accompanied with blackmail, with if you don't do this, you're not getting the money. I mean, it's insanity, pure insanity. The Troika, in short, is operating under a general scheme of whoever has money can survive, whoever doesn't, just dies. And that is valid for health, that is valid for assets, because they're after grabbing assets, not only public but also private, and that's the general idea, through blackmail, through not being accountable, through not having to basically account for anything to anyone. I think I basically one last issue is, they talk about how they deregulated the whole working sector. They abolished all the collective. They deregulated the contracts. All the collective contracts. Now you have individual contracts in most of those countries where the Troika stepped foot in, and that of course is for a race to the bottom of the salaries, and of course when some Troika low-rank civil servants were interviewed in this film, very few, one specific one was interviewed in Portugal. He was talking that this is a matter of competitiveness. So it's the usual narrative. It's what one usually hears. But where are we right now? We have those experts who basically want total submission and total surrender, and we know it. We have documentaries proving it. We have documents. We have ministers showing letters, ex-ministers. We have testimonies. We have investigative journalists. We have everything proving it. What do we do? This documentary gives a light of hope, because at the opening of it, it talks about Syriza just being in power, and how this was basically going to bring some hope to the people. And then it ends with some sort of I mean, it doesn't give hope, but I'm sure it throws that new angle there, that now the people elected this new government. The documentary itself presents the finance minister of Greece in the documentary. So it's sort of like shows there could be some hope. But as a very legitimate, I would call her, journalist mentioned in one of her articles yesterday, or today for you, I mean yesterday for you, today for me, there is one thing that is clear by now, and it's funny because this article was published by the Press Project, which is basically a newspaper that usually backs the government line. But the specific journalist talks about one philosophical question, which is one thing cannot be one thing and its opposite. Something cannot be one thing and its opposite. But this is what we're observing. This is what we're seeing so far. Basically, we have Mr. Varoufakis saying one thing. Sometimes he says one thing and it's opposite. But let's keep it more general. Mr. Varoufakis is saying one thing. Mr. Dijsselbloem, the president of the Eurogroup, is saying the opposite. And the question is, who is wrong? Who is right? Who do we believe? To sum it all up, this looks like schizophrenia. In short, because we talked about the documentary, we talked about the Troika. Now we can officially say that the Troika is still here. I don't care how Mr. Varoufakis calls it. I don't care how it's officially written in the papers. It looks like the Troika, or the technical teams, are there. You can call it institutions. I call it the Troika. Mr. Schäuble calls it the Troika. Everybody calls it the Troika, but Mr. Varoufakis. He also said, the latter, Mr. Varoufakis, with a little bit of humor, he added that if they like the word so much, we can send it to them, meaning we can send the Troika to all those people using the word Troika. And that was a nice little humorous sentence he threw out there in the press conference. But that's not very funny, is it, Mr. Varoufakis? So coming out of the latest Eurogroup, one presents, there's a common thing. Both sides look like they agree, but then whatever they say is opposite, and so I don't know where they agree, except maybe for the fact that what's common and successful is the fact that the program will go on, the Troika will go on. Mr. Varoufakis said, today we made a decisive step toward the implementation of the agreement. These are his words. So basically, he agrees, he acknowledges that he's going to go on with the agreement with the lenders. So more money, when Syriza and himself were saying, we don't want any more money. He is asking for money, right? Then he also said that there's not going to be any unilateral action. He also said another humorous little thing there, where he said, we're going to always ask for their help. We're going to be in consultation about everything regarding fiscal targets, so balanced budget, but not for everything. So, I mean, I don't understand. Is there anything of importance that is not related to fiscal budget and fiscal and balanced budget? Because, of course, are you going to ask the Troika if you need to go to the restroom? Obviously not. I mean, some of you politicians would probably even do that. But yes, you are ready to ask for permission for everything. Basically, none of this was your proposal. None of this was proposed by you. Your list, Mr. Varoufakis, looks like it's extremely similar, if not identical, to Mr. Karduveli's list, who was the previous finance minister, the one, holding that position before you. So you don't want to call this a bailout agreement or an extension of the bailout agreement. You want to call it a new contract. And of course you call it a new contract because at the end of the 4 months, you yourself are talking about probably a third program. You left it open, didn't you? All these good things, completely contradicting initial Syriza positions, even Mr. Varoufakis' statements at the beginning when he was elected finance minister. But what does Mr. Dijsselbloem said? Mr. Dijsselbloem talks in at least, I don't personally like him. I mean, he's just doing his job. So he's just talking about the Greek authorities and the institutions must and will start as from Wednesday. When you hear institutions, you can replace it by Troika, with a view to achieve a speedy and successful conclusion of the current review. Very clear. Troika is back on the ground and it's going to achieve it's going to follow, see if those measures are being implemented, and then make a review. Also, it said, Mr. Dijsselbloem says, we agreed that the discussions with the institutions, so let's replace it by the Troika. We agreed that the discussions with the Troika will take place in Brussels. In parallel, as needed, technical teams from the institutions will be welcomed in Athens. So technical teams will be welcomed in Athens. Troika, he's taking the words of Mr. Varoufakis. He says we're a hospitable country. We are famous for our hospitality. So we are welcoming technical teams in Athens. We actually still have them there. There is the Reichenbach team still in the Greek ministries, and I don't see any. We'll just have some more. We'll have the new name of the new people coming. It's the Troika, but baptized, like christened differently. Lastly, he says, we underline the importance of close and efficient cooperation between the Greek authorities and the institutions, and underlined commitments of no unilateral actions and no rolling back on measures previously agreed needed to be respected at all times. So everything that was agreed before by the previous government is just is being underlined and is just being implemented. That's all. Question for the new government: what do you mean exactly when you say the memorandum of understanding is over? What do you mean exactly when you say austerity is over? What do you mean exactly when you say the Troika is over? When you speak about technical teams, when you speak about what's called fiscally neutral equal measures, meaning that if you want to, the only freedom that they give you, the Troika gives you, or the institutions, is to, if you want to give some money or hire some people in the public sector, you'll have to take that money from somewhere else. So what exactly do you mean that when you say the end of all this? Because none of this is ending. None of this has ended. Everything is just going on. So we have this whole double language, very, very blurred landscape, and it's all in relations to words. But the thing is, critical decisions will be made in the next few days, and critical measures will be implemented, and the people will know at some point, if they don't already. I think they do. This is going to be a terrible, terrible mistake. And I think nobody, even the people who voted for this government, the convinced lefties, as I call them, was expecting that. I think the problem is, at some point one has to start telling the truth and naming things for what they are, and stop using this very, very horrible, blurred language. And that was all I wanted to say. I think I've said it all. Hello, where's everyone? Yes, no one is here, I know, but that's good because it allows me to talk for a while and not have to go through your messages. It is a short episode today, a short program. I just wanted to talk about this documentary. I will be back here tomorrow in Greek, and we will be talking about, I don't know what. We'll probably talk about German reparations and what happened and how this has been seen by the international press. Thank you for watching. Make sure to watch this documentary. It's called, again, oh my God, where is it? It's called, I'm forgetting the title. It's called Powerful and Uncontrollable, the Troika, and it's an Arte documentary. You can find it online. It has everything you need to know about the Troika. And unfortunately, that Troika, which is still there and is here to stay, which is still here. I mean, it's not here where I am, but in my country and in other countries. And I think it's more powerful than ever, because after the mismanagement, the political mismanagement of the newly elected Greek government, I think things look like they're getting worse, and they're gonna get worse because the European partners also look like they're losing what they call patience. So they want the measures to be implemented fast and without any other discussion. That's what I get. Okay, thanks for being here, William, Anna. See you Monday for those who speak English. William George. Yes, fingers crossed that this documentary is indeed translated into English. Yet, not that you don't know all the things that you're going to be seeing in this documentary. Most of those things we already know. We can, but what's interesting is that you hear it from the same politicians who, at some point or another, were forced into doing things, or so they say, and show the letters, the emails. So it's quite significant to hear it from them. At the same time, when I was watching the documentary and I was looking at those politicians, especially Greek politicians, saying that, you know, we felt so bad because we had a popular mandate on which we needed to act, yet we were being blackmailed all the time, and if we didn't do what the Troika wanted us to do, you know, we wouldn't get the money. At the same time, I'm thinking, why did they lack the courage to stand up against such, you know, unelected, low-rank officials, blackmailing them and telling them what to do? Why didn't they stand up against them? I mean, that is an obvious question. Didn't they know that the people would be on their side? Didn't they know that the people are waiting for somebody to stand up for them against people, you know, institutions like Troika, against people who are implementing those policies? People are waiting for that. And this is proven by the fact that when the new government was elected and Mr. Varoufakis, you know, publicly said the Troika is done, and that first press conference with Mr. Dijsselbloem in Athens was an absolute failure in terms of, we thought that Mr. Varoufakis was on the people's side, and that handshake, which was really cold, gave the people hope that oh my God, this government will stand up for us. At the time, the people were supporting the new government in the likes of 80%. And this is getting lost right now. So with just the first wow of Mr. Varoufakis, just speaking up his mind, all the people were on his side. So the question is, why don't politicians stand up for us? Why don't they? Why do they come afterwards and show us what really happened and say we couldn't do anything? Why? They are there to do something for us. So I still do not think that they should be, there's any excuse for them, or that they should be, they should be forgiven for not standing up against us. But anyway, it's interesting to see them talk about it. Some new people, Stadios just joined. I don't remember talking with you before, but he says at some time we have to concentrate at the root of causes of our default as a country. Well, the root, I mean, I've talked about it forever on this program. I had nothing to do with economics before. I didn't, and politics, by the way, you know, I have a totally different background, yet I had to dig into economics, and so I am still learning, but I've learned quite a lot in the last 2 years, and I am learning how money works. I am learning what sovereign money means. So if you really want to concentrate in the on the root of the problem, I think that's where you focus on. You focus on the fact that Greece has been in a union which has strangled it in return, and it needs to be a sovereign country. It needs to have some freedom to create, to put money in the economy, and raise productivity, give jobs to its people, and we should stop talking about this debt. This is a concept that has been imposed by neoliberal dogma, but it is totally possible for a country to be sovereign and to operate in a democratic way when it issues sovereign currency. I have by now all the proof for it, and it is very unfortunate that people are still under the neoliberal propaganda of debt and this and that. So, you know, one has to just break free of those chains and make a decision. I think that's my opinion. I'm not, I'm no specialist, but I have common sense. The people are waiting, says William George. I am waiting for Yanis Varoufakis to come through, and the root is the euro. Of course, the root is the euro, and yes, it is the euro. Definitely, right now the euro is the root. But of course, if we did go back to a national currency, we would need to do. If Mr. Varoufakis did it, he would probably do it all wrong, because it can go terribly wrong as well. So you need real planning and people who know what they're doing in place in order to jumpstart a country, jumpstart an economy, and work within a new political system with legislation that values democracy, values a constitution, not what we're living today. So yes, right now it is the euro, but I think Greece, it was definitely not as bad when it didn't have the euro, but it wasn't ideal. We all knew that Greece needed to get rid of nepotism, needed to get rid of that political system it had, and these issues are still to be solved. Yet I think right now it should break free of all those chains. The past has been. Past 40 years have been terrible for Greece, and unfortunately it loses the new generation. The brain drain is absolutely insane right now, and so it's almost like a country without its best youth is a country without any future, and we should definitely do something to change the course of the way things are going. Sergius mentions a good start is a book by Penelope Delta. What do you call that in English? Story Without a Name. I've read that when I was a kid. This was one of my favorite books. William George says, when a country loses control of its money, in time it is no longer a country. Yes, absolutely. I think right now that's one of the things that Greece should do. The thing is, I'm not sure those people in place right now, especially Mr. Varoufakis, I'm sorry, I don't trust, because he allows no debate about the euro either. He doesn't even allow a debate. He made this whole drama about the journalist of the Corriere della Sera they put this title in the Italian newspaper saying, the title of the Corriere was, if Greece can't find a solution, it will proceed with a referendum or new elections. And that made him crazy. He said, we shouldn't even talk about this. We shouldn't talk about hypothetical questions. We shouldn't even talk about anything, outside the euro, because he said it like this. He said, this is bad for the subconscious, the collective subconscious or something. It's bad for the subconscious. He used the word subconscious, and this is pretty insane. It's like we shouldn't talk about, we should only talk about the euro, and within the euro, after all this harm caused and the harm that is still going on, this is insanity. And I'm sorry, I don't agree and I don't trust him anymore. That's my personal opinion. William George apparently believes maybe something can change. I personally don't, because when you don't allow debate, that's it. This has been taboo in Greece for the past 5 years, and you have a new minister who is, in theory, only in words, he called himself an erratic Marxist and a leftist. And he doesn't allow any discussion outside of the euro. So he either hasn't understood anything, which of course I doubt. I think he understands very well what's going on, and it's proven in this documentary, or he just is, I don't know, under which and whose pressure he is and works for. He probably is under a lot of pressure. But again, you're a politician. Stand up for your people. Who cares about the pressure? I don't care about the pressure. You're there to support me. Otherwise, I can be a finance minister. That's what you were elected to do. That's what I don't understand about politicians. Saying we couldn't do anything because we were blackmailed. Then why are you a politician? Anyway. Stergio says, sorry, I'm not referring to money. This is not our problem. Okay. I don't know what you mean. I think money is our problem, but anyway. Thank you everyone for watching. I will talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow and Friday is in Greek, so make sure to tune in, spread the word. Don't forget to subscribe, youtube.com/underground network. Thanks for interacting and participating, and make sure to watch the documentary. If you can't find it with English subtitles, I'm sure somebody will do the translation very soon. Take care everyone, and have a good night. Bye bye.